Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Valley of the Judged. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me I have two good brothers. Ha 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 ha. We have our three-eyed master of dad jokes, good brother Joe.
Howdy.
And making his debut in the monastery, the man who is but a bird, good brother Ferb. So, obviously,
Well, bird really is the word.
Obviously, last week we finished up with Kamigakari, which is really good. I'd say those who want to do shonen battle manga in TTRPG form, that's one they need to look at. Especially if they're a fan of something like X or Soul Eater. Or any other where a lot of the power set is based on special equipment. But because of that, we're in between seasons, which means it is one-shot week this week. And hold on a moment, because my playlist is not playlisting the way it should, because technology likes to screw us.
Yes.
As I often say, technology, it loves to give us the middle finger. Okay, there we go. Now it should be working out. So it's not just more than our dumb voices. But a thing that I'm trying to do going forward when it comes to one-shots is that each of them is technically a two-shot. This will allow us to clear off more of the one-shot backlog, as well as adapt for when a Quickstart drops that completely takes me by surprise, which is more or less what happened this morning.
Oh no.
So now obviously Fight with Spirit is one that I had teased a few times but ended up putting off due to bad timing. And originally the other one was going to be Doom Spiral, or at least it's Quickstart. Doom Spiral isn't out yet, and it was on Kickstarter up until a couple weeks ago, and then, finished. But then this morning, I get an update on GameFound about the Blasphemous TTRPG that's being developed by Shadowlands Games, who I've worked with before and I've covered their stuff. They're some pretty good guys out of Spain. I probably wouldn't work with them a lot more if it weren't for issues of timing. And the fact that they are putting out their stuff in Spanish first and then translating it, which is why some of their projects have been taking a while. Essentially, instead of making the game and translating at the same time, they're making the full game first and then handing it to a part of their team who is localizing it into English. And Shadowlands Games is not the biggest studio out there.
Mm-hmm.
Like the lead design is for what we're going to cover later is only a couple people. And this is something you're going to see a lot. You're going to see a lot of games made by small teams.
That is good.
In some cases, whole one-man shows. But as mentioned earlier today, the first item that we're going to be covering is Fight with Spirit. This is a game from Story Brewers, who I've covered in the past. They tend to lean more into narrativist or story games. Fight with Spirit is a TTRPG that is designed to emulate sports anime. So things like Prince of Tennis, Ice Shield 21. I've heard people bring up Blue Lock, but I haven't seen Blue Lock, so I'll take their word for it. As Aim for the Ace. I'm pretty sure you can think of a few others in that particular subgenre. And the PDF here is pretty light. This isn't a quick start. This is the full thing. It's only 44 pages. There are some additional materials we'll get into in a minute, but this is in that same vein of like Dust City Outlaws, where the core material is light, but it's spread out a bit. And something else some folk will have to get used to is that this is a game that does not use dice and instead uses cards, which I'm perfectly fine with. I don't have the aversion to dice mechanics to card mechanics that some of my supposed colleagues have, because yes, everybody likes the shiny math rocks, but you don't need the shiny math rocks for it to be a TTRPG as much as some people will claim you do. After all, there's games out there that don't use any randomizers, period. But obviously this was another successful Kickstarter, and I will admit, I have interviewed the two main creators, V. Hedro and Haley Gordon, in the past. Not for this project specifically, but I have interviewed them, and I did back the game on Kickstarter. And incidentally, I think it's a very nice touch that we have these little links to videos going into how the game is played, or going into role-playing as a whole. No, because every game is
That very interesting.
But after that, it goes into some of the materials involved. Trait cards, condition cards, a character sheet pad, a team and connection sheet pad, as well as different types of match games, along with the tokens for Trouble, Fight, and Spirit, as well as the match deck. This is not exactly a standard poker deck, because the deck is only concerned with numbers 1 through 6, but still only 4 suits. Now, the idea with it is that the player characters are members of a given team tied to a specific sport.
Mm-hmm.
The specific rules for the sport aren't as important as the drama of being on the team and trying to win. Is more the story. I guess I'd liken it to how you could watch a movie like Mighty Ducks or Remember the Titans without knowing how the sport is actually played, and still get the gist of things. I'm pretty sure there's people who've watched certain sports anime who've never watched the actual sport.
Imagine.
I mean, it can certainly help, but it isn't a outright requirement. Lord knows, one of my favorite sports movies, Moneyball, is not entirely about the sport itself of baseball, and more of just the moves that were being made to try and make what was a bottom bitch of baseball into something a bit more successful.
I see.
And obviously, you still have a GM, who is in this game referred to as the facilitator. But the role of the facilitator is more in the traditional film director approach rather than anything else. course, then it goes into the whole thing with the players. And don't worry about any audio lag for these things happen.
Not the audio lag.
So then it goes into a game overview, and specifically what sports the game is built, what kind of sports the game is built for, and what kind of sports the game isn't built for. Group or individual sports are ones that the game is built for. So it references hockey, basketball, volleyball, cricket, or one-on-ones like fencing, chess, tennis, and jousting. The idea of somebody doing a battle manga themed around fencing amuses and horrifies me. If only because you'd have a bunch of people trying to figure out why there's such a big deal between different countries' styles of grips. Which sounds very petty, but it is one of those things that can cause a lot of arguments. I've been in plenty of those arguments personally. There is distinct differences between French, German, and Italian grips. As well as the fact that if you're doing foil style fencing versus saber, you're not using the same kind of sword, and you're not aiming for the same kind of spot.
I could be.
You could, and get bopped for doing an illegal move.
Again, dang it.
Like, foil, you're only trying to do thrusts, and you're only aiming for center of mass, so chest and torso. Just as one example. But asynchronous sports, it's not as compatible with. So things like
Time for a sport manga about chess.
Well, one of my favorite manga of all time is about mahjong, so precedent.
The one where the girls are playing mahjong?
No.
Oh.
The one where mahjong.
The dude with the really angular nose?
Yeah. Yeah.
Understandable.
I know, but I forgot the name.
Akagi.
Yes, that's the one. Thank you.
You know, playing reach style mahjong, which I understand the rules. It is very complicated, and I suck at it. Anytime I've tried playing reach mahjong, even in Ryoga Gotoku, I've consistently got my ass kicked.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't understand anything either.
How long does the East Wind round last? They keep winning.
Oh yeah. But and the thing is, Reach Mahjong is the result of a few hundred years worth of house ruling, which is why that style is more or less exclusive to Japan. But examples of sports that would be incompatible, where one team goes and the other team goes, are listed as ice skating, a battle of the bands, and gymnastics. They do talk about it maybe being tackled in future expansion, but for the core rules, no. And it is a smart move to make clear there's a lot of sports you can do with this game, but you can't do every sport or every kind of competition. But the framing device is the player characters are athletes in a knockout style tournament. Story beginning part way through the tournament, after you've gotten some early wins. If you do a full tournament across several sessions, you'd have to go through the quarters, semis, and final part of that tournament. Each would be more difficult than before, with higher stakes as you go on. Each round, you face a different rival team that you have to beat to advance. If you're playing a group sport, you need to win matches as a team. If you're playing an individual sport, you have to seek victory in your individual face-offs against rivals. The final result is always determined as a team. And if you are eliminated or you win the grand final and you want to keep on, you do a time skip and resume it at the next tournament, which, if you've watched enough anime, then you are intimately familiar with tournament arcs.
Oh, definitely.
The tournament arc.
Senseiya, Yu Hakusho, many others.
And equally familiar with tournaments if you watch Japanese pro wrestling as much as I do, because there's, like with the New Japan calendar, there's at least 3 different tournaments that they do every year. You have the New Japan Cup in the first third of the year. The Best of the Super Junior, usually in the spring. The G1 Climax, which is a round robin tournament, and World Tag League, which is usually at the tail end of the year. And sometimes there are a few others. But point is, tournaments are inevitable, and I know some people hate tournament arcs in anime, but I understand why they get a lot of use. It's a way to utilize a wider selection of characters at once, without having to spin plates about how you're integrating them into a particular arc. That, and in some cases, it's a bit of a holdover from the days of martial arts movies. I think the one film that's kind of a patient zero for a lot of cliches you see is Master of the Flying Guillotine.
Master of the Flying Guillotine.
Which kind of started the whole motif of establishing a martial arts tournament to draw somebody out. That was more or less the plot of that film. And I've seen, and there's plenty of others, but then it goes into the team sheet. Obviously, each individual character isn't part of separate teams. The whole party is part of one team. There are 4 teams to pick from, each with different reasons pushing them. The team's story is supported by its team's special, which is a pressure that they have to contend with. They also have 2 unique match games that bring their journey to life during matches. The team sheet is shared. And the examples that they give are the Ash Point Arrows, which are described as a reigning powerhouse, the Dockside Demons, the Fallen Champs. They were the best in their league, but have fallen on hard times. The South Beach Sharks, the newcomers on the block, and the New Crest Neons, the talented team that can't seem to get it together. And I think some expansions added a few more teams, but those are the main 4 in the core set. So, When it comes to characters, if each player has a major character, the core of the character is 3 traits, which help determine motivations and relationships.
Yes, I see.
And thank you, Jadekin, for joining the madness. Hope you enjoy what we do here. The traits are important details on characters. And actually, let me zoom in a little bit so it's easier for folks to see. You start with 2 traits and can add a third. At the core of each trait is a drive, a goal, desire, or motivation that drives them and the narrative forward. If you're unsure what your character should do next, consider the trait drive to further their story. Kids heard about you from a local issue who apparently plays in your Saturday games. Lol. Well, however you hear of me, welcome to the party. By acting according to those trait drives, you earn spirit tokens, which you can use to boost actions. There's also condition cards, which are more of the emotional fallout of pursuing those trait drives. You can take a condition when you complete a trait drive, and can complete a condition to earn spirit tokens. And they give an example of each here. Like the trait card we have is sibling with potential, and the drive in this case is convince your sibling to put their pro career above the team or work out what they truly want, and a few backstory questions that are more of suggestions to help flesh it out. And the condition has the name, the description of that condition, and the drive that, if you complete it, you earn 1 spirit. But if a trait has a question in orange, it's for relationships with other major characters. If it's pink, it's relationships with connections. There is a very strong emphasis on color with a lot of the book, which I do appreciate. Though my sympathies to anyone who tries to print off the sheet, because color ink is a nightmare to work with. Then again, working in an office for as long as I have, I have a particular hatred for printers and fax machines.
Completely justified.
I think when we replaced our printer, I ended up suggesting recreating that one scene in Office Space. You know, the one with the fax machine that never worked.
Oh, yeah. It's been ages since I thought of Office Space. The only thing I ever think of is my stapler.
Oh, they brought 3 wooden bats for that thing for when we broke it. I broke all 3 of the bats.
Dang.
In my defense, you're dealing with 7 years of pent-up frustration against that copier.
What did the copier ever do?
Here's an easier question: what didn't it do?
Its job.
There.
That is fair. It was a jam machine. It would screw up every other time. So it was just everyone hated it.
Listen, I had to deal with a copier that my boss refused to replace because it was still perfectly good, even though it was out of warranty. So I placed 2 slices of bread on it as well as a spreader knife. He took one look at it, and he's like, "What's that? Are you preparing lunch?" I'm like, "No." Apparently you want a jam machine. I'm just waiting for it to finish the sandwich.
Modern problems require modern solutions.
Or bad dad jokes.
Oh, that comes natural.
Yeah.
But then we have the different types of tokens. Purple ones are trouble tokens. These represent challenges that you'd have to deal with. It can be offered to another player to create a complication in their story. When you accept one, you swap it for a fight token, which you can use in the match ahead. Trouble tokens can be played at any time except during match games. Fight tokens represent your determination to make things go your way. You gain them by accepting complications caused by trouble. You can have a maximum of 4 at once, which is indicated on your character sheet. You can spend them for advantages in and out of matches. And spirit tokens represent passionate selfhood that you draw upon. You can get these by completing traits and conditions. You can have no more than 4 of them at a time. They can be spent during match games to draw and discard additional cards. We'll get to that later. But they have to be spent before you draw. Some match games have other uses for spirit as well. And connections are supporting characters that hold influence over the major characters, i.e. the PCs. Each player takes the role of one connection in addition to their major character, the facilitator playing the rest. And some of those connections are rivals. Which, if you've seen enough sports anime or enough shonen anime, you should be very, very familiar with the importance of the rival character.
Wait.
Even if some of them have more of a history of getting their ass kicked. Hi Vegeta, how you doing? But the structured form of play is divided into collaboration, backstory, and the proper cycle of play. Collaboration and backstory, you could kind of describe that as the Session 0. And for those unaware, Session 0 is a preamble to the first proper session of play where you're going over kind of the tone, what sort of campaign you guys are trying to do, and everyone trying to get on the same page regarding the types of characters that they're making. If you're only doing a one-shot, it might not be necessary to go into detail in those, but if you're doing a full campaign, it's definitely going to be essential. But the cycle of play proper is divided into opening credits, daily life and event, match, ending credits, and upkeep. So you essentially have a 5-act structure, meaning you could kind of set it up like a episode of a TV series, which I tend to do as a GM anyways.
Yes.
Every time I hear the term upkeep, I keep on thinking it's more like a card game.
Well, we are using cards, so
Fair enough.
yeah. But matches are what are the dramatic part of the matter. This can be with match games where you're drawing from the match deck, or match moments, which are shorter scenes. Now, match games can be either general, which will always be orange, special ones, which are blue, and usually played at the beginning and end of a match. Rival, and this is exclusive to group sports, essentially rival teams, and out of match games for things out of matches. Then winning and losing them. The player who chose the match game wins it. Their team gets 1 point. If they lose it, the point goes to the opposing team. the team with the most points at the end of the match wins the tournament. Points are abstract and don't represent the score in fiction. Instead, broadly telling you who is ahead and how much of a gap there is between the two sides. And as I'm going through this,
It's who's.
Good.
I was about to say, it's whose line is it anyway?
And yeah, everything's made up and the points don't matter. Yes, the
Mm-hmm.
points matter as much as the amount of playoff wins of the Cleveland Browns, which is to say, none of them.
Damn.
Okay, and that joke has layers because Drew Carey was hyping up the audience when the Browns came back, only for them to get completely wrecked by Pittsburgh on Monday Night Football on national television. Like all that hubbub and all that sound and fury about after years the Cleveland Browns are back, and Pittsburgh is like, welcome back to the league. Time to get your ass kicked again.
Oh, hey, look, we're back. Oh, there's the ball. Oh, how did we drop it? I guess we'll never know.
I mean, a few years ago, the Browns ended up being a record holder, just one nobody wants because they went an entire season with no wins. That is not easy to do. You can not being able to win a game in 17 weeks. But with match games, we have the expectations. Some of them are unique to certain teams. The play to find out is whether or not you'd be interested to play that match game. The in focus is the participants of it. So for expectations, you have your team, and a rival team.
Mm-hmm.
Then how it is set up, played, and the aftermath. With each match game has particular rules on how you might win it. And it is going to be a case of drawing, in the case of expectations here, drawing a card, or actually drawing 2 cards, as well as an additional card if anyone spent spirit to help you out. If you draw the suit that you're looking for, then you win, and your team ends up getting 1 point. But then we have the match deck proper. This is the main randomizer you're going to be seeing instead of a dice. As mentioned before, it's not exactly a poker deck. Although you could probably make an equivalent with a poker deck. Just take out all the face cards, all the jokers, and any card with a value of 7 or more. But the 4 suits of it are energy, connection, prowess, and focus. There is also a token for momentum that's involved as well. At the start of a match, in the opening moves part, one side will have momentum. If they do, they end up winning any ties. As you move through the rounds, the difficulty of passing checks gets higher. And things like match moments are break-in actions where you can reflect on a match afterwards. But as well as each card having some inspiration suggestions in the form of these questions. Like headway is, who do you rely on for help? Setback is, why can't you keep up? They're questions that the game isn't going to directly answer, but more to give ideas for play. But then it goes into collaboration, which we already mentioned. That's part of the session 0 aspect. And is basically answering a set of questions.
So, quick question: where are they supposed to get the cards? Do they come with the game when they buy it?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's if you went the digital route, you do have a printable version of the cards. You could just print that on cardstock and you're golden. If you went with the physical version, it's going to be in the box set. But there are some additional stuff in the things in the digital version if you want to play this on like a virtual tabletop. Like there's an entire subfolder just for assets for playing online.
Interesting.
And that includes all of the cards, both front and back. Which you can print on cardstock yourself, or there's plenty of card printing services where you could send the images there and have them printed. You just have to pay a few bucks. They're
Fair enough.
used a lot when people want to make custom poker decks, but people have gotten creative with it. I know I have when it comes to making custom Magic cards that I use as references. Through stuff like Magic Set Editor, which I've had since fucking high school.
Oh yeah, I remember this.
But then we have backstory, which is divided into 4 parts: the team, the major characters, the connections, and the team special. And it goes into some suggestions for each of the teams. With the team special, it is more about a defining thing that unites the whole team. And the same thing goes with all 4 of the teams here. Then, when it comes to major characters, as mentioned, you take two traits. You have to have at least one trait with an orange question, and you can't have the same. No 2 characters can have the same trait. And after deciding connections, the facilitator takes 2 trouble tokens. Everyone else takes 1 fight token, 1 spirit token, and 2 trouble tokens, which are all placed on your character sheet. To that end, I feel like a game like this, if someone's going to do it virtually, using Roll20 would not be or Foundry would not be my first choice. This feels like it's better served in something like Tabletopia or Tabletop Simulator.
Yeah, I was thinking Tabletop Sim would be ideal, especially with all the moving parts in it.
Yep. You also create and assign connections. Assigning connections is just who's going to be playing what connections. Every PC is going to be playing 1 connection, and the rest will be played by the facilitator.
I see.
But when it comes to the rules of play, some of this we've already covered, like completing trait drives, which when you complete a trait, you return that to the deck, mark the checkbox on your character sheet, take 1 spirit token, as well as whether to take a fight token or a condition. When you complete a condition, you return that condition card to the deck and take 1 spirit token. And as mentioned, trouble tokens are something you can spend to build up advantages. But it's a case where you're taking a short-term complication to get a long-term benefit if they complete it. But it has to be, but you have to offer the opportunity to take trouble, and if they accept it, then great. If not, then it's treated as if you didn't use it at all. But then there are things like resolving complications outside of the matches, as well as character conflict.
I was wondering about that part.
Mm-hmm. So if you need to have a PvP moment because it fits the story, there's ways to do it. But as mentioned, the play cycle itself is opening credits, daily life and event, match, ending credits, and upkeep. Opening credits you could kind of see as the overture. It's basically setting the stage. Now, when it comes to daily life, I guess you could consider that akin to the first act in a play. Usually culminating in a particular event. And there are a few suggestions for potential events. Then finally going into the match and eventually the ending credits. And of course, with upkeep, that's where you do things like refreshing trouble tokens, checking for trait or condition drives that have been completed. If you're doing full tournament, choosing additional traits, or dropping a trait if it no longer fits, as well as creating additional connections. But as I look through this, you know what sport would be an interesting challenge to try and do this in a campaign? Any form of motor racing. With
I guess an entire RPG where everyone drives left as fast as they can.
I wasn't thinking of going with stock cars per se. I was thinking of, say, F1 or Rally.
Or Initial D.
Yeah.
Toge racing.
Red line in the RPG.
Yeah, Toge racing would be interesting, but I mainly would pick Rally just as a holdover from knowing about the insanity that was Rally Group B back in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Where the participating manufacturers for Rally Group B were basically given free rein to make whatever they wanted. It's like as long as the model is sold at least 200 copies commercially, everything's on the table. So you'd have these both supercharged and turbocharged engines on frames that were half the weight because they were made of aluminum.
Okay, but can I still play like my entire Initial D soundtrack because I kind of miss that genre of music? Just saying.
And although I think we did have an interesting take on that whole Toge downhill racing in Need for Speed Carbon, which I often see people go, "Why wasn't there never a sequel to Need for Most Wanted?" Like, there was. Carbon was a direct follow-up. It's just a lot of people missed it because it wasn't doing the exact same thing. That, and it was trying to do a bunch of stuff at once, and there was a lot of chaos behind the scenes. Like you look in game development, you're gonna find a lot of stuff that didn't make the cut. Even more so when you have a game that's changing its direction like 3 or 4 times to the point where trying to find a chain of events is like looking at a tumbleweed. But then they go into matches, which are represented in match games. How it's framed, how to do suggestions on doing certain highlights. And the setup is you first shuffle the match deck proper, and then place it on the mat in the middle. Place one difficulty tile above the mat on the side for the current tournament round. Place the momentum token. One side is going to have momentum and the other isn't. Then the opening moments, final moments, and tiebreaker for the sport type next to the deck. Essentially the moments for the particular match. And if you're doing group sports, you take the rival match game for the team you're playing against and place it as the first in the array. Then take the general ones and remove any that don't match the sport type. Place the rest face up. And draw 3 general match games.
I'll be honest, I have a hard time following rules like this unless I have the cards in front of me.
Yeah, that is going to be a double-edged sword with this kind of game. And
which might be why they have the video tutorials as well.
That is
Real.
That is possible. Now, you can have people on the team spend spirit in order to draw additional cards. It's a 1-to-1, which you can draw an additional card for each spirit token spent, or have your opponent discard a card for each spirit token spent. It's context sensitive. If there is a fight option, you can lower the value of a card for each fight token that's spent. This does mean that a card value can go all the way to 0. And, of course, then opening moves, which determines momentum, and going into things like setting up the moment, answering a headway or setback question, which each card will have both. And when it comes to as mentioned before, as you go further on in the tournament, the difficulty goes up. So, in the first round, essentially the quarterfinals, you can exchange 2 fight tokens for 1 spirit token. In the semifinals, target numbers increase by 2, and rivals get 1 more fight token when comparing their cards with player cards. At the grand final, you can exchange 3 fight tokens for 1 spirit. Target numbers go up by 3. Rivals draw 1 spirit, like a player would. And if you want to make things even more difficult, double the number of player match games. And if it's still not hard enough, you can take the Elite Challenge option, where target numbers are treated as 4 higher than normal. Rivals draw 2 spirits, and if a player has to draw a certain number of cards of a chosen suit to win, they need twice as many of that suit. I was like, oh, you thought it was too easy? Here we go. Have it even harder. You know, for those true masochists among us. And I think we know at least one person who is that kind of masochistic when it comes to difficulty. I mean, someone has to willingly play Toho games on insane. I'm not
No
that guy.
comment.
I could never.
Uh,
I'll
or,
have you know I haven't touched a Toho game in ages.
or barring that, I'm pretty sure somebody thought about playing the Plutonian experiment on Nightmare. Pro tip: don't do that unless you want to experience pain and suffering.
I like my shmups, but bullet hells are too extreme for me.
Yeah. The closest
I
thing
like
to
the fighting game more than the bullet hell.
Mhm. The closest thing to a bullet hell shmup I did was Ikaruga, which that's kind of cheating because of the whole black and white phases setup. So it's not as bad as those screen-filling bullet hells, where you have to move by centimeters. Sometimes even millimeters, if I'm being honest.
Yes.
You're not wrong.
But if you want to double down on that kind of masochism, you can always boot up a Kaizo Mario mod. And then
You know, I got this lovely game called Wizardry if you want to try.
fuck off.
Hey, you were talking about.
I respect wizardry for the history and its importance, but I can't get far in it.
A few years ago, I did a whole digression on the difference between bad game design and evil game design.
Mhm.
Bad game design is the usual affair. You know, somebody made a shit game and it turned out shit. No, nothing
Yeah.
really groundbreaking there. Evil game design is when the designers know that they're making something dickish and they have the talent to get away with it.
Mhm.
Sometimes because they didn't think things through, and other times because they were intentionally trying to be dicks.
Yes.
That's the reason I bring up the Plutonia experiment, because I think Mario Casali had brought up that they intentionally made it for people who wanted a new challenge. I could also bring up Mega Man and Bass, because that was born out of Inafune being petty when people were asking for a new Mega Man game on the SNES. It was like, oh, you want a new Mega Man game on the SNES, even though things are shifting towards the PS1. You're gonna get one, but whether or not you like it is
Those
another matter
poor
entirely.
fools. Those poor fools.
Be very careful what you ask for.
You mean like the people asking for Waluigi in Smash?
But they do go into time skips and the ending of the tournament. Basically a way to reset the board. You know, changing characters, changing motivations, changing traits, all of that. And the last few pages are more about advice for the facilitator, as well as playing the game online or playing a duet and what you need to do that. They also have a separate guide for online play and what to do with doing one-shots. Because if you obviously, the core rules are built for that tournament arc, but it is possible to do a one-off, just doing one match, or some alternate approaches like PvP, as well as how to mess around with the rivals and doing free-for-all style tournaments. as well as tweaking the setting. And we also have the all important index.
All hail the index.
And the nice thing with the PDF, the indexes page numbers are bookmarked. Not bookmarked, hyperlinked. But there are bookmarks in the PDF proper, which is very nice when it is there. There's also a nice little quick reference at the back.
I appreciate that.
But personally, when it comes to what we have here with Fight with Spirit, this is one that, paradoxically, I think people who are less familiar with more traditional role-playing games are going to have an easier time than people who are.
Again, this entire thing feels more like a board game with role-playing.
Yeah, it is very much a narrativist game. And the reason why I had to skim some of the things regarding how certain mechanics work is things like the match phase is contextual based on the kind of matches that are drawn. So the way those matches are resolved depends on the cards used. But if you're just looking for something that's very beer and pretzels, I don't think this is going to work for that kind of table. It's specifically built around sports drama, and the people who have more of a background with those kind of shows are gonna have an easier time. Though, for me personally, there's nothing stopping me from taking the rules and applying it to a fantasy version of a sport. So, there's how you can sneak your way into getting Blood Bowl into something like this. Which...
That will be interesting.
Yes, because what we want is shonen anime version of Blood Bowl.
I like the video game version of Blood Bowl, but I kind of feel like that played things too straight. I think there was a missed opportunity to do... Imagine doing NFL Blitz, like the old one from 2000, but with Warhammer races.
Okay, but now I kind of want like the some of the older football announcers just talking about the weird shit that happens in Blood Bowl. Like, you don't give them any context as they're recording, and then you just have them commentate on a play. It's like, is that a steamroller?
I could go with that. As well as a bunch of other options. But there is one anime that would work very well with this, even if you might have to do some tweaking. Don't remember IGPX?
Okay, shoot. No! You did... Oh, gods, really?
Am I making the master of dad jokes cringe?
Not cringe, but just I never expected to hear about IGPX in the year of our Lord 2025.
You should know better to expect the unexpected. But...
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. But if I was to put this in my grading system, I would probably put it as recommended. What it does,
Really?
it does very well. However, that recommended is with quite a few asterisks. It's not bad enough to get downgraded to playable.
Okay.
It is one that if you don't have a narrativist leaning, you're gonna have problems. If you are willing to play more narrativist and aren't as concerned with the shiny math rocks, then you'll have an easier time. I could see this.
That's fair.
I could very easily see this getting play at conventions.
Considering that it feels like it wouldn't take very long to run like a singular match in order to get people to give it a shot, I can see that.
Yep.
Like if someone could actually get a decent mod for it in tabletop sim, I could see getting a bunch of like random people online to play this if they've never done any form of tabletop before, but they have played like board games.
Let me check the workshop.
I just did. I couldn't find it.
Yeah. Now it wouldn't be too hard to set it up in TTS. But
No, it wouldn't be. But the hard part would probably just be getting the images of the cards properly set up and all of that. But
yeah.
that's just more of a crunchy bit.
Yeah, and that's doable. But because there's a lot of cards, you're going to be putting in a lot of work. I do appreciate that the option is there.
Mm-hmm.
But for what did you think of what you saw with Fight with Spirits?
Like it's a novel idea, I think. Never imagined the idea of dramatic sport anime to be converted into a tabletop.
Mm-hmm.
I would suck at it because I can't act to save my life, but
yeah. Though, because of Critical Role, there's been
and the rules could be used to. Sorry.
Yeah. Because of Critical Role, there's been this mindset that you need to be a full-on actor in order to properly do role-playing games. I can tell you from experience that is not necessary. But
you don't even have to do voices.
This is more me being real bad at acting. Unless this idea that you need to act.
Yeah. There are
like really bad.
There are some people who can play in character constantly. I don't recommend doing that for the same reason a lot of acting coaches are trying to discourage people from doing method acting. Mostly because of the long history of method actors going crazy. Like,
half of that is Jared Leto himself.
Jared Leto's a method actor, or at least he claims to be. He's also a fucking nut who managed to piss off his entire cast during the filming of Suicide Squad, and seems to be radioactive.
Yeah, guy is weird.
Carrie is also a method actor and is weird in his own right, though not a complete nut, just weird. And Ledger was a method
Jim or Drew.
And Brian says for RPGs, you should not need to roleplay, you should be encouraged to roleplay. And this is a game that is very much built on that narrative aspect. For some people, that's going to come easier than others, which is why, even though I gave it recommended, it is very much on the line between recommended and playable. And for context, I never do point-based scoring. I haven't done point-based scoring in about 8 years.
Okay.
Instead, I do a tier-based scoring system, which is less built on how good a game is, because that can be argued back and forth until the cows come home, and more of how easy or not easy it would be to recommend a game. And the more asterisks I have to put on that recommendation, the lower grade it's likely to get. From top to bottom, it's strongly recommended. These are ones that I can recommend to just about anybody and not have to put too many caveats. Recommended, which are those almost greatness ones where there's a lot to like, but there's maybe a couple stumbling blocks. Playable, where it's good, but the GM might have to put some extra elbow grease into it. Caution, which are ones where you're going to need to do a fair amount of house ruling. Looking at you, rifts, and just everything from Palladium that I've ever gone through in my life. And at the bottom is avoid. These are ones where I don't think there's enough good in them to give them any kind of recommendation, or the amount of house ruling you'd have to do is a case of the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Very rarely does a game get a void.
You know, based off of that system, I think I would list this as recommended. Just by looking at it, it feels very much like it has a. This will be really weird. It has a similar feel to another role-play heavy tabletop game that I enjoy, just very much less crunchy and more slice of lifey. And if nobody has ever heard of Kingdom Death Monster, then good on you.
I have.
Haven't.
But less moving pieces. Each match runs faster, and I really do enjoy the way that this looks. I'd have to play around with the pieces and kind of take a look at how everything works with the rules to get a better handle on it. But I think I would also put it under recommended.
Yeah. It does have that caveat of you need to have the right kind of people who are able to properly gel. But that's something that's a case with every narrative-heavy game. So I wouldn't feel right singling this game out for what's essentially a common flaw within that genre.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be like getting on a Universalist game for being kind of crunchy when most Universalist games are going to be front-loaded on their crunchiness.
Crunchy.
That's just the nature of the beast. But we are going to take a break for about 5 minutes, and when we get back, we'll return with the Quickstart for Blasphemous, which, as I mentioned before, only dropped this morning at the time we are streaming this. So we will see you all in 5. And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. Joe had to step out early because he didn't realize how late it was going to be, which I appreciate the time that he spent on this. But now it is time for us to continue on with the look at Blasphemous. Now, obviously, this is not the full game. This is just the quick start. But there is enough of it for us to work with. The Blasphemous book is going to be slightly larger at 74 pages as opposed to 44. And incidentally, I find this particular brand of religious horror to be an underrated aesthetic. But this is developed by the folks at Shadowlands Ediciones, who I'm very familiar with through things like The Winter King and Terraforming Mars, as well as some of the Call of Cthulhu campaigns that they've done. When I heard that a Blasphemous TTRPG was being developed, I had a bit of a laugh at some of the people who thought it was going to be using 5e. Because when I saw Shadowlands was developing, I'm like, why would you think that? They've never done anything 5e. You know, some people want to assume the worst.
Yes.
But I will note that I like the fact that we have bookmarks. The table of contents is hyperlinked. And let me go to the back to see if there is a index. There is not on the back end, but we might see one as we go on. And just having an index in a quick start isn't exactly common, but it is appreciated.
Yeah, very much.
So the quick start guide is divided into two parts. The first part looks at setting and basic rules, and the second part looks at a sample adventure called Miasma. And it does say in the how to use that throughout the adventure you'll come across additional tools. I'm kind of iffy when that happens in quick starts because I like the adventure and the core mechanics to be separated instead of having mechanics be seeded into the adventure. Like if an adventure is built to be a glorified tutorial, that's one thing, but this is more of a me problem. I will freely admit that. But obviously this is taking place in Custodia, in a world dealing with the effects of the grievous miracle, with the idea of the player characters being penitent ones. And after going into a bit of the introduction, it goes into something that I like, which is thematic pillars. This is something I've tried to do in my own work, and it's a nice way to succinctly go into what sort of themes you should expect. And here we have austerity, endless dusk, martyrdom and guilt, a crumbling world, sorrow and fervor, ruins of antiquity, and the one and only faith. But and of course, going into some of the aspects of the miracle,
Hmm.
which you've played both Blasphemous 1 and 2, so you know it being called the grievous miracle is kind of an understatement of how that thing can mentally and
Oh yeah,
physically fuck with people.
it's a
Mhm.
it's a messy, divine, so to speak, creature.
Mhm. But
Like I can't think of anyone affected by it that has gotten happy or good.
mhm. No.
People just get less screwed up.
Mhm. And obviously through the effects of the miracle when it came to the boy in the tree, you get the theocracy and everything that came with it. Um, things like the turned throne, the punished one,
Yes.
um, the mother of mothers, um, the fact that the spiritual center of Custodia has been completely locked off from the world and and created all manner of chaos.
Mhm.
But obviously, then it goes into the areas of Custodia, bringing up the Mother of Mothers, a metropolis of temples, which I sup- I suppose the Mother of Mothers could be analogous to Vatican City,
Yes,
um,
but
just on steroids.
bigger. Yes, on steroids is a good way of putting it.
Is Do you know what the word metropolis translates to?
Not really.
It can be the mother of all cities, or just short, the mother city.
Hmm. Interesting, makes sense. And the Mother of Mother is so huge that it not survives. It can be found in the second game,
Mhm.
even though so long has passed.
Oh yeah. But after that, it goes into penitent ones, and one of the core aspects is that you are playing as one of them, i.e., every player character is a penitent one, someone who is attempting to cleanse corruption while seeking salvation from the miracle. Uh, As soon as you're anointed as a penitent one, you're given a weapon which you will use to cleanse, as well as a bile flask, which is gonna work similarly to how it
Brilliant.
worked in the video games. Uh,
Yes.
And the idea, and of course, they are putting in the mechanic that when a penitent one dies, their body is restored and transported to the last place you prayed at.
Which I found interesting. That they keep the Souls-like mechanic in a tabletop.
Yeah, another Souls-like RPG TTRPG that I've talked about in the past, Frag Eternum, does a similar thing. And what it really ends up showing is that Steamforged Games were complete idiots when they did their Dark Souls TTRPG and used 5e as a base.
Oh, okay.
And they got a lot of flack for that, especially since for some reason they decided to combine health and stamina into one resource called Position, but have it still work like health and stamina did.
Yeah, that's a weird choice.
When I talked about it with Zan, I described it as creating a problem that didn't exist. Plus, still utilizing classes when most Souls-likes don't really do classes in that sense. Your class is essentially a starting package.
Yes.
But after you've picked that, and you have the ability to spend souls on improvements and get better equipment, you've got free reign.
Oh, yeah. Often start as a knight to end up as a wizard. Because it can cause more damage.
Yeah. But you do have the fact that deliberately causing death will often bring the wrath of the miracle. Now, it does state that each penitent one belongs to a creed known as a archconfraternity. These tend to be, I guess you could consider them religious sect.
Yes.
And when they eradicate guilt from the land, the condition that's over their soul is eased by tears of atonement. This manifests when one of the condemned is destroyed and their weapon drinks from the last of its life. Tears of Atonement is going to be how you're getting experience for tools or catalysts. Basically, the way it worked in the games. You know, the equivalent of souls, which you would use for leveling up or use for getting equipment, or in some cases, improving equipment.
It's like all like in the game.
Then we have a bit of a narrative glossary, going over some of the concepts like what a penitent one is, what a archconfraternity is, what a cavalry is, the path that leads a penitent one to reduce guilt and increase virtue, the children of moonlight, the ones who are constantly bringing you back, the miracle, the twisted one, tears of atonement, the condemned. Condemned, of course, being divided into the punished and the guilty.
Mm-hmm.
And the prie-dieu, a altar dedicated to the miracle.
The game is the bonfire, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Then we have the character sheet proper. So going into a section by section dive of how the character sheet is going to work. So your name, experience, which is less of experience points and more of your background or what professions you have, um, what
Right?
confraternity you may belong to, if any, virtue, which is how free of guilt your soul is. This is a pool of points you can spend to perform deeds. So I guess virtue is going to be your what I what I call an extra effort system. This is a
Mm.
limited resource that can be used to either push rolls in a certain way in your favor or do things that you normally couldn't. Examples of the extra effort mechanic would be things like Edge in Shadowrun, Moxie in Eclipse Phase, hero points in D&D 4th Edition, willpower in World of Darkness. Those are a few examples of that kind of extra effort setup. Guilt is how burdened their soul is. As your virtue increases, your guilt decreases. The more guilt you have, the harder it is to come back after being killed. If you die for good, you are transformed into a monster, which is more dangerous the more guilt you have. It also ties into a guilt bonus, which is a modifier on rolls to increase virtue score, and subsequently reduce guilt after slaying a guilty one. And we do have a sidebar on how guilt and virtue work.
Mm.
When you defeat a guilty one, you increase your virtue by making a roll. You compare your virtue with their guilt and roll 1d10 for each point of difference, taking the highest result of the die you roll. You add your guilt bonus and compare it with your current virtue score. If the result is higher than your virtue, this goes up by 1 and your guilt goes down by 1. After that, your guilt bonus is reset to 0. If the result is less than or equal to your virtue score, your virtue doesn't change, but you get +1 to your guilt bonus. Which, because of that, it's going to mean that it'll be easier to increase virtue early on, but the later on you go, it's going to get more difficult to increase it.
Yeah, see.
This isn't too far removed from the learn by doing approach to skills that you see in basic role playing like Call of Cthulhu. But then we have the 6 main attributes, which are discern, charm, faith, grace, power, and wisdom. These are going to be rated from 0 to 20, with the baseline being 10. The modifier to rolls is basically whatever the score is minus 10. So of course, if it's below 10, you're taking negative modifiers. Then you have endurance, which is basically your health. Your bile flask, which we've already talked about how that's basically an Estus flask in all but name.
Yes. But it's broken on your face instead of drink, at least in the game.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of hard to drink it when you've got a giant mask.
Yeah, exactly.
But it is measured in charges and effectiveness, as well as potency. Charges is how many times it can be used before it needs to be recharged at a pre-DU. Effectiveness, the number of die you roll when it comes to determining how much you recover. And potency is the size of dice. It also... It can be replenished by praying at a pre-DU at the rate of the number of charges equal to your faith modifier per hour. So it's not an automatic recover. You do have to spend time getting it back. Although, if I'm being honest, if the players are in downtime, I may just it goes right back to max and only do the per hour thing if it's more stressful.
Yes.
But then you have fervor, which is a pool of points that can be used to spend be spent on gifts. This can be recovered at a preview at a rate of fervor points per hour equal to faith modifier with a minimum of 1. And gifts, I guess some of the special techniques that you could access would qualify under gifts, as well as them being used with fervor. And then we have skills. We have 12 skills. Each of them is tied to a particular attribute. Those skills are armory, attention, block, craftsmanship, empathy, evasion, medicine, religion, stealth, survival, technique, and vigor. So armory is for maintaining weapons. Craftsmanship is for maintaining objects. Attention is, looking at things. Blocking is self-explanatory. Empathy is...
Attention could be useful if the dungeon master decides to make hidden walls, hidden passages, like the game is full of it.
Yeah, that's things like that, or perception rolls in something like D&D is always something that I don't allow people to roll for it just to look around, because a roll should be only done if there's a risk of failure.
Yes.
And if you can just look at something in the environment, there's no failing unless you randomly lose your eyes.
Here we can give the excuse that's something more mystical, because in the games when you open a secret passage, there's a mystical sound accompanying.
Yeah, and I have seen more and more people use soundboards or use sound tracking for their games. I know I do. I have a set of soundtracks that's about 26 hours in total length for some of my games.
Nice.
A lot of it based on certain themes, and not all of the music is straight from video games. Some of it is classical pieces. Some of it is pieces from soundtrack artists. It's more about establishing a theme.
Yes.
But each skill has an attribute that's associated with it that acts as the cap. I.e., no matter how many skill points you have, it can't be higher than that attribute. Then we have determination, which is a pool of points you can spend to reroll once. If the reroll fails, you didn't spend determination unless it's a damage or protection roll. So you have that option to give yourself a do-over, but don't abuse it. And you have the penances. Upon completing a penance, you obtain determination, restoring all points obtained through penance after praying at a pre-due. So you want more determination to spend, to perform more penances. And gifts are talents, prayers, or techniques that you can use depending on description. Gear is self-explanatory. Every gear piece has a load score of 0 to 5. This accumulates a carried load and can't exceed the maximum load. So you can't be a total pack rat. But at the very least, it's not doing like the amount of pounds like a lot of games used to do. Or you've probably seen at least one person who will play Skyrim and grab everything, then get surprised that they are dealing with encumbrance. But then
I see often.
Then we have the rosary, which is a string of beads you can add mysteries or beads that give additional abilities, though it's capped at your faith modifier. Then your main weapon, self-explanatory. And tears of atonement, which we've already talked about. and protection, which is dice you use when it comes to protecting yourself from different types of attacks. The amount of protection you get depends on the damage received. And fatigue, which is a resource that you accumulate when you do more than one journey stage. And then we have an example of the blank character sheet. I appreciate how everything's more or less set up. I do hope in the future there is a two-page version of it, because I have a bit of a history when it comes to games that insist on only doing one page for their character sheet. Because once you get into late game, you don't have enough space. Like, you've accumulated a bunch of stuff, you're not going to have enough space for all of your abilities. And when I was working with Matt designing the character sheet for the Final Fantasy project, I specifically asked him to put in extra page PDFs just for that kind of occasion. You know, ones that could be printed out, ones that could be copied multiple times to account for additional spells or features or whatnot. And some people look at the fact that the whole character sheet is like 8 pages and go, that's way too complex for a character sheet. And I'm like, you physically cannot use all of the pages. A lot of them are to account for redundancies.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
But, and we have a anatomy thing on the condemned. You know, their name, their description, their guilt, which is a resource that only guilty type condemned can have. Their endurance, which is always equal to their power score. They have the same attributes as PCs, but they do not have charm or wisdom because, well, condemned aren't exactly the social butterfly.
Basically went insane. They went hollow.
Mm-hmm. One of the attributes has an asterisk to note which one they use for an attack, i.e. that attribute is used as a target number for reaction rolls against their maneuvers. Then impiety, how dangerous an enemy is. This also is used to calculate tiers of atonement when they're slain. The maneuvers that they have access, as well as a means of doing a randomized version of their maneuvers. You're rolling a 1d6 for punished and 1d10 for guilty. This does, if that's what I think it is, there is the possibility that someone could run this game solo, using that d6 or d10 as a kind of soft AI. But the guilt for punish, they only perform one action. Or one maneuver, I should say. For guilty, they get one after each of a PC's turns, and have an additional one for every 2 followers, NPCs controlled by a player, or every 2 NPCs on the encounter map. And since the guilty are meant to be bosses, that would certainly fit.
Yes.
Some of them will have their own special rules, as well as their own special ways to use guilt, much in the same way that a player character could use fervor. But
which makes sense.
Then we get into the mechanics proper. You're using the full range of dice. The D20 is going to be the most common die you use. You do have the rules of die scaling, so if it talks about upgrading or downgrading, you're just going up to the next step. If you'd be stepping up and a D12, you just add 2 to the total. it steps up again, just 2 more, and just keep going until it doesn't apply. So the basic roll is d20 plus attribute modifier against a target number. You are trying to aim high. It could be against a static difficulty, with the baseline being 10. So 5 is easy, 10 is normal, 15 is difficult, 20 is very difficult, 25 is impossible, and 30 is impossible. It could be the difficulty could also be the attribute score of an adversary, or just straight up an adversary's roll. So if you beat the TN, you succeed. If you don't, you fail. If you tie, it is called a punished success. You succeed in your task, but suffer some kind of hardship as a result. So I'd say a tie is a yes, but. I think that would be an apt way to describe it.
Right.
If it's greater and you roll a 20, it's a miraculous success. So a yes and. If you roll a 1, that's a barren fail, i.e. you auto fail. Now, if the result is less than the value of an associated skill, you can re-roll that d20 and use the higher result, which means that the skill rating capped by attributes starts to make a bit more sense. Then, the higher that cap, the better chance you get of a do-over without having to use any resources. On the other hand, you only get that do-over once, so if the second dice failed as well, you're kind of SOL at that point. Then we have modifiers, which can be applied positively or negatively. It could be a 1, a 3, a 5, a 10, or a 20. If it's something that helps you, it's a blessing and is added to the roll. If it doesn't help you, it's a retribution and is subtracted. And there's also a side thing here about the punishments of the miracle. Or if you end up doing something the miracle doesn't care for, the penitent one, you can roll a d6 and get a punishment. 1, the PC's maximum endurance is halved. 2, you deal half damage. 3, you can't be healed by bile flasks. 4, bile flasks deal you damage equal to how much they should heal. Ow.
That's awful.
5, when the PC dies, a portion of Tears of Atonement, usually a d6 roll, evaporates instantly. Or 6, if the PC dies, they do so permanently, no chance of rebirth. This is on a straight 1d6 roll. So, don't get on the bad side of the grievous miracle.
Situations is bad enough already.
I could see that those kind of things being punishment for doing things like player killing, or those cases where somebody's intentionally trying to be an asshole or be that guy. Nobody likes that guy at the table. But you do, when it comes to combat, battle maps are divided into zones. These zones can have more than one character, so it isn't full grid combat, which I'm fine with. I've grown to resent this idea that a TTRPG necessarily needs to do grid combat or do theater of the mind. I think there are other opportunities within that. I don't have anything against grid combat as a whole. I just don't like the idea that that's what you have to do.
Oh yeah, like a rule for all.
Now, you're still determining order of combat through initiative, which is based on your grace score. The first initiative is done. You are not rolling initiative, it looks like. You're just looking at everybody's grace score and then ordering it from top to bottom. If anybody ties, you look. If two PCs draw, you look at whoever has the highest free load, which is the difference between maximum and carried load. If it's a tie between a PC and an adversary, PCs always go first. And PCs can either move to an adjacent zone. There's no limit on the number of characters that can occupy a space. If you want to move through a zone with enemies, you have to make a evasion roll using grace. The TN being the highest attribute among the enemies in that zone. If you fail it, each enemy does 1 damage point per contact, and their move action ends immediately. You can survey, where you are choosing a target character to learn a characteristic about them, and of course attacking. For melee attacks, the target has to be in the same zone as you. You are rolling straight damage, and interestingly, I don't see anything about rolling for attack. So you're not rolling for attack. You're just assumed to hit, and you're doing the damage based on your weapon.
Interesting.
Now, if the enemy's reduced to 0 endurance, they die. You immediately get Tears of Atonement equal to half of the enemy's impiety. If you deal damage equal to twice their endurance, they are in their death throes until the end of the round and can be executed. If you make the highest possible damage roll, so if you're rolling like 2d6, you get boxcars. You inflict martyrdom. You roll the dice and re-roll it, adding the new result. You can only do this once. Punished ones cannot inflict martyrdom. So essentially we have exploding dice, but you need the highest possible, which gives a bit of an advantage if you're only rolling 1 die for damage. Because then you'll have an easier time getting a 6 on just a 1d6 roll than getting 2d6s on a 2d6 roll. So there is that kind of trade-off. And with an execute, you finish off the enemy and gain 1 fervor as well as Tears of Atonement. You can also manage items.
Also taking for the game.
You can also manage items, swapping weapons. I like that swapping weapons is just 1 action. Instead, I've seen some games where stowing away a weapon is an action and drawing a separate weapon is a completely different action, which results which is, I suppose, realistic, quote unquote, but it also creates such an action draw that most people are going to be sticking to 1 weapon. But
yeah, I agree.
You can denote or basically spend fervor to use or maintain a gift. You can pray, gaining 1 fervor point. You can only do this in urgent situations like combat. You can give fervor points to an ally, though the cap and how much you can give is your faith modifier. And they have to be in your Archon fraternity. Though, again, this only works in urgent situations like combat. You can purge, which is a way to reduce your endurance to gain fervor points. The cap is your faith modifier. pretty sure there were plenty of abilities that worked like that, where you could reduce your HP to give yourself an advantage. Then reserve, which is basically a hold action. You know, you hold your action and then potentially use it as a reaction later. And if you have the option to react, because you get 3 actions that you can potentially hold. This is where you can do things like dodge, block, or parry. And this is the main way you're going to be mitigating damage. You're not rolling to hit is not as common as rolling to mitigate damage. So dodge is a evasion roll against the attribute score of the opponent that's attacking. If you succeed, you avoid all damage and can move to a different zone. If you fail, you take damage but can still use protection to reduce the damage. But you're at least taking 1 damage no matter what. A block is a block roll plus whatever shielded protection you have that's relevant. If the PC's power score is less than the opponent's, it automatically fails. If you fail, you take damage, can still use protection. And the third option for mitigating damage is parry, which is again a block roll plus any shielded protection. If you have less power than the opponent, then it fails. If you succeed, you ignore the attack and can immediately make an attack action against that enemy. But if you fail, the enemy does the maximum damage. You can still use protection to reduce that, but they essentially roll max damage against you. So, I'd say much like in the games, doing parries is most definitely a risk. But obviously, once everyone's taken their actions, round ends, new round begins. But the 3 action part is definitely a nice touch. It is an interesting move that you're not rolling to hit.
Yes.
It is straight damage, which means even a fight against weak enemies is going to be a risk. And I wonder if that was the intent.
I think he might have been. The game takes a page from Dark Souls. Like once you get used, you still roll through the normal enemies, but at first they hit like a truck. You're not careful.
Yeah, especially those skeletons.
Very few enemies in Blasphemous aren't a pain in the ass. I think some of the worst are the statues, living statues. Because can only hit them through in front of them, which is where they attack you, and hit them from the back.
Yep. But obviously damage is self-explanatory. Something else to note is condemned perform maneuvers, which is detailed in their stats, but always follow a targeting priority called the chain of punishment, which again lends itself to that soft AI thing I talked about before. Which means you could run this solo or run this GM-less, potentially.
Which I don't know if it was the idea, but it's interesting.
I've seen games from one of my dear friends, Alex T, who seems to have this talent for being unable to make a bad game, which is why I keep highlighting his work. that was he builds his games as solo games first.
Hmm,
Uh,
that's different.
and my first introduction to Alex T was the game Sacrifice, Incense, and Iron, which, if somebody wants to run Berserk in tabletop form, that is the game I recommend.
Ah,
It may not have the name, but it has the theming, and that's something you're going to see a lot. Games that may not have the particular name, but are certainly channeling the theme of a given game.
got it.
Hmm?
No, I got it. They channel the soul
Mm-hmm.
of the game.
Pretty much. When a penitent one dies, 1d4 of their fervor becomes enrooted in an effigy. Obviously, we've talked about how fallen penitent ones are brought back by the Children of Moonlight to the last pre-DU they prayed at. When they are revived, they get back all of their endurance, fervor, and their bile flask charges are restored. If you roll a 4 with that 1d4 roll, the die explodes. And that effigy can only be recovered when you make contact with it, of course. Now, when a PC dies, to determine whether the miracle brings them back, you have to make a faith roll against a TN of 20 minus your current guilt. You can spend as many fervor points as you wish to get a +1 for each point spent. Those points become part of that spectral effigy. And remember, even on that kind of roll, a 1 is an auto fail. So you do get the whole thing of returning to life from getting killed, but it's not a guarantee. Now, with protection, this is essentially damage reduction, but it's rolled as a die instead of a static number. And it's not something that you can rely on, because if you make a protection roll and the result is lower than the damage suffered, the protection die drops 1 stage. So, tanking is not the best idea.
Yeah. Challenge is as it should be.
Yep. Now, with traveling, that is where the rules for pilgrimage comes in. When you make a pilgrimage, each participant makes a vigor roll with a TN equal to the danger level of the area they're traveling around. For example, the Wasteland of the Buried Churches has a danger level of 10. If you succeed, no problems. If you fail, you have to roll a d20 to determine the negative outcome. If that d20 is less than the danger level, you're going to be getting into a fight. As far as how many punished ones you'd have to deal with, roll a number of d6s equal to the number of PCs, pick the highest result, that determines how many show up. For every 6 punished ones obtained beside the first, or each time this outcome is repeated, add a punished one into the confrontation. So when it comes to those d6s, the minimum roll is the number of PCs involved in the confrontation. Now, if the roll is higher than the danger level of where you're going, the PCs suffer 2d4 fatigue. This can be taken by any member of the group or shared among them. Each fatigue point requires you to spend 1 endurance or fervor, and each time the outcome is repeated, you move the fatigue die up a size. So traveling has its own risks just as much as combat. And then it is going into the miasma campaign. And we do see on page 28 an example of the zone design of combat, which is a nice touch, though I do wonder how people are going to do this when it comes to their own campaigns. So I hope that there's a handful of just generic zones that can be used. And there's probably going to be plenty that represent the different areas of Custodia from the games.
Yes, I think so.
But because of how this is set up, it actually answers a issue that I've had with how people treat grid combat. And I did a stray comment about it on Twitter a few months ago, but to revisit it, I need to bring you into the forest of all knowledge for a moment. So, I've likened the way grid combat has been treated in games, kind of like the difference between, say, rugby and football, or here in the States, the difference between NFL style football and college style football. You know, in one you have very spread out, very open formations, and another you have very tight formations. Early grid combat in the days of like original D&D or the BX era, the BECME era, were assuming you would be doing encounters in dungeons, so very tight areas with not a whole lot of movement and an emphasis on what's known as marching order. But as time has gone on, we've seen more and more set-piece-like designs for encounters, which is exactly what it sounds like. Some of them wouldn't be too far removed, being a map in an FPS. And I may or may not have stolen a few FPS maps and used them as combat maps in some games. Look, if you're gonna steal,
It's a good idea. I haven't thought of that before.
Obviously, it's not going to work for every game, but if I'm doing a sci-fi game that's going to be doing a lot of action, why not steal from a multiplayer map? Sometimes I would just use a battle map from a game like Battlefield and just draw a bunch of lines on it. Or if I'm feeling really uncreative, just use a whiteboard.
Hey, if it works.
Yeah. But we do have an with the Expeller of Miasma enemy, we do have an example of how the monster setup works. And thus, and they don't have the typical 6 stats that a PC has. So obviously, this is a punished, not a guilty. The main stat that they're going to be checking against is, in this case, faith, with power as its own thing, and more importantly, the maneuvers thing that's mentioned here. Essentially, you'd roll a d10, consult the result, and that result determines what their action is going to be when they get a chance to act, as well as using their own guild effect, the power of guild, which they can spend 1 guild point and replenish endurance. Unfortunately for this example, they only have 1 guild point, so they can only do that once. But then we have a further example with the winged face and another area. And the rest of the Miasma adventure is working about how I would expect when it comes to this. And at the tail end, we have a few sample PCs, as well as their particular weapon. We have Aldara, who her weapon is a whip, which is dealing 1d4 damage. And based on what I'm seeing here, it is looking like the design is going to be a bit freeform. If that's the case, it means that they avoided one of the common mistakes that people do with this and assume that you need to do a class system. But I'd say another representative difficulty with Aldara, for example, you only have 9 endurance. You only have 9 endurance. A Bile Flask only restores 1d4 endurance, and she only has 2 charges of it.
Yeah.
And damage-wise, the whip is only doing 1d4 damage. The only protection she has against fire, which is 1d6 protection, so best to not take too many hits.
Yeah. Harder mode.
Yeah. But, Dolores has 13 endurance, so it's a little bit better, but only 1 charge with that Bile Flask, even if it does 2d4 recovery. But they are part of a confraternity, in this case the Anointed Legion. I would be interested in what impact being part of a confraternity has. It does look like it does give 1 penance.
Curious on that part too.
But let's see. We have Guzman, who's using 2 daggers, attrition and contrition, which is just 2d4 damage. I have a feeling that no matter what weapon you're taking, you're only going to be using 2 die types.
Possibly, yeah.
But then when it comes to Tadeo, they're part of a confraternity, the Order of the True Burial. And it does look like they have a confraternity rule like the other one. So maybe one of the things you get from being part of one of those is a penance that you have. But they don't have much in terms of offense, because their weapon, the Stinger of the Punished Soul, only does 1d2 damage. On the other hand, they have
not great.
Quite a few gifts that they can utilize. So Tadeo feels like it's trying to be the equivalent of a mage build.
Yeah. I take him over Aldara.
Yeah. Veramundo is part of the confraternity of the Silent Sorrow. And it's definitely a case of penance, because while he's got a lot of endurance, he has some very significant disadvantages. One of them being you can't talk and you can't wear armor. But it also looks like as part of that confraternity, he gets a specific gift. In this case, Merciless Judgment. When you make a damage roll, you can replace the result with your grace or power modifier, whichever is higher. The limit for this is the highest possible form from the die associated with the wielded weapon. Martyrdom cannot be inflicted in this manner. And they have a great sword, the Weight of Sorrow, which deals D10 damage. And it looks like the rosary bead thing allows you to have additional effects. In their case, the Reliquary of the Suffering Heart, which lets you spend a bow flask to regenerate an endurance point at the start of each round until reaching the maximum. And they've got some of the tankier characters do have a few more endurance, but not much. And when it comes to the bow flask, you're not getting a whole lot of charges. There's also some nice little...
It's truly a penitent game.
Mm-hmm.
No pun intended.
Yep. some reference cards for the different creatures.
I imagine they will develop more the confraternities and the rosary items, for example.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much, and
The game they have special gears that I think here they will be turned into rosary items.
Yeah, we've already seen a couple examples, and then at the tail end it talks about beyond the guide, and yes, we are doing open progression, no archetypes. You can choose penances to strengthen determination, as mentioned. Looks like they are doing the whole hidden areas kind of thing. As well as making your own gear using resources. That will be interesting, since I have a complicated history with item creation in games. In fact, a lot of them I'm not the biggest fan of, whether it be video game or tabletop.
Huh.
Like, a big reason I'm not the biggest fan of a lot of item creation systems is the strict specificity of items required. Think of it like a recipe. Yes, some people will follow the recipe to the letter, but considering how many variants there are of certain dishes and cultures all over the place, why can't that same energy be used for item creation in games?
Yeah, that's a very good point.
I'm pretty sure you can think of a dish in your particular neck of the woods that has a bunch of different variants depending on who you ask, and everybody thinks their variant is the proper version.
Oh, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Lots.
I know that's the case with hot dish in the Midwest.
Yes.
Or the many arguments I've seen regarding local barbecue in different parts of the U.S. I may or may not have had to break up at least one fight involving that. But they also talk about improving gears, as well as improving bow flasks with Quicksilver, putting beads into rosaries, and finding relics or hearts to put on your weapon. So we are doing that customization heavy, archetype free approach. Gifts are going to be in the form of prayers, talents, and techniques. The limit to them is based on tiers of atonement. Though here's an interesting thing, which I'm not sure was in the games, but is something that is going to fit for a TTRPG, because you could do this in the video game potentially, but I don't think you did. Building a sea and developing it using resources. That sea can attract pilgrims, which can be converted into members of a co-fraternity. Or you could build a library, a reliquary. You essentially have a base building mechanic that they are planning.
Yeah, not quite. In the game's not quite. The closest is like the first game you can donate money to a church. And the more you donate, the bigger it gets. You get a few rewards. The pre-deal, they get bigger. And eventually can warp you around Custodia.
Oh yeah. And you could also build a training ground for militant custodians. So essentially followers you can bring along with you, as backup or as an alternative to penitent ones. Also, the possibility of playing mortal PCs who don't have the miracle. Give Children of Moonlight Bonded One rules, or messengers or guardians. So we certainly have that part. Creating processions, as well as a bestiary with all of the condemned that appear in the first game. As well as, it looks like they want to do creation rules for making your own punished or guilty. That is a nice touch. I always appreciate when monster creation rules are put in games. That was a high priority for me.
This could be very interesting because while the game is mostly based on Spanish Catholicism, not prevents anyone from taking other religions creatures from other areas of the world.
Yeah. And I do think it'd be interesting if somebody took some of the religious iconography from like South America and used that as a base. But I mean, I have a bit of a bias because I find sugar skulls interesting.
Very interesting.
But overall, what's your take on what we see under this quick start for Blasphemous and the potential of the full game?
Well, I would be biased, of course, because I love the games, especially the first. But to me, it's really recommended because the idea of is horror religious world is not so common. Blasphemous was the first time I saw it. And I think there's lots of potential, including the idea of putting other religions in the middle, in the mix, because Custodia is just a kingdom. There's still other kingdoms to explore, so you can add, I don't know, the Egyptian deities, something related to Buddhism, whatever.
Yeah.
Indigenous tribes, myths. There's lots of things to add still.
Yeah, and
I like how punishing the game is.
Yeah, it's definitely a case where you don't want to be rushing in blind, because based on what I've seen, you could go down easily in a couple hits.
Yeah, because this is a punishing world, so makes sense that it has to be everything hard. No one in this world has a easy life. Even the elite, they are screwed up. Just see Escribar. Like they would be the equivalent of the Pope. The guy was turned into a tree and set on fire by the miracle. No one is safe in this world, so it makes sense that it's so punishing. But yeah, I think it would be a very interesting RPG to play. I think it's a highly recommended so far.
Yeah, I could. Now, obviously, some of this hinges on how the full game looks, and the crowdfund hasn't even started yet.
Yes. Oh, yes.
But It is on but the GameFound is up, and I had thought that I put it in the description, but I guess it didn't show up. Nope, never mind, it did.
Mhm.
But I put up the GameFound in the description on YouTube, so it'll be in that VOD. The
All right.
project has not launched quite yet. I think one of the more bizarre comments I saw was that they turned this thing into a war game, which I don't quite get. How you get war game out of this?
Yeah, I don't see it.
Maybe it's because I've played war games in both the broad and skirmish senses. At my most generous, I could say these zone-based design
Possible.
encounters, but most war games don't do that. Most war games don't even use grid combat. They use straight-up measuring tape for their setups. Or they will use inches in a full freeform. BattleTech uses hexes, but most war games you're going to find aren't using this zone design. So, if it's the fact that it's focusing on combat, well, this is a brutal, bleak, and violent setting, and it's like, what did you expect? To see a campaign of political intrigue?
It can be a little bit of that, but the world is infested with the undead.
Mm-hmm.
You can't avoid battles here. It's part of the setting.
Yeah. I do think one thing that some people might take some time getting used to is it doesn't look like you are adding your modifier to skills. It is essentially a reroll chance. The only modifier you're doing is one of the core 6.
I see.
Oh. I have seen some people raise a fuss about the fact that it's using a D20 because they have D&D brain rot and they think this is going to be like that. Now, even I've had to deal with that shit. But in that kind of situation, I just say skill issue.
Yeah.
I feel like with what I'm seeing here, it is not far removed from the stuff I would see from Alex T. And in the same vein, I think people who are very much looking to do that kind of religious horror of Blasphemous will be right at home. There are a few things I'd like to see how they're going to work in the full book. One of them is how factions are going to work, how the idea of building a sea is going to work, and things like item creation as well as the monster creation setup. Because I'm assuming that you have the option of making both punished and guilty, and the guidance on how that's done is going to be crucial. If it ends up being a case of giving me a blank slate, throwing me into the middle of the pool and saying swim, damn it, that's going to be a problem. Because that's not a system. That's a suggestion box.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond all that, I'm liking a lot of what I'm seeing. I hope to see more of it. And between this and Where's Blade, I'm glad that we are seeing games that can certainly be high lethality, but don't have to be a poor man's version of D&D circa 1982 or some shit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also glad that we're not seeing that we're seeing more point resources instead of the um, Vancian model of charges. I hate that. I didn't like the Vancian model when I was 10 years old. I still don't like it. And I've gone into detail as to why. But that is going to wrap it up for this one. I'd say between the two of these, I think Blasphemous is going to be an easier recommend to people. Nothing against Fight with Spirit,
Oh, yeah.
but it is very, very specific about what it's doing.
Yeah, yes. Sure.
Blasphemous is going to be a bit easier because people are familiar with the work of the Game Kitchen, whether it be the Blasphemous duology or more recently with Ninja Gaiden Ragebound. And it would be very interesting if somebody does like what you suggested, a hack covering a different kingdom that's built around a different region's form of religious horror.
Mm-hmm.
And to that end, I'd like to throw in a crazy idea. Imagine taking the religious horror themes of Blasphemous and using the mythologies of the Mayans and Aztecs.
Yeah, that would go hard.
I mean,
Mayan, Aztecs.
in the same vein, I could see a similar thing being done with some of the insanity that is the mythology of Eastern Europe.
There's some.
Especially since an easy way to mess with somebody's head is expose them to somebody who's exposed to the Disney version of a fairy tale. Expose them to the original version of a fairy tale.
Most people have no clue how screwed up the original fairy tales are.
I remember,
or how even fairies are.
Fairies are assholes. Everybody knows that.
They are.
But
a lot of people think Tinkerbell. They don't know.
No, they're assholes who snatch away people's kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I remember a friend of mine really liking The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and when he found out about the original book, he said he was going to read it, and I was very, very tempted to warn him, but my shoulder devil once again said 2 words. Say nothing. Do not tell him what he's getting himself into. So I didn't. Same thing happened a few years later with The Little Mermaid, and that's an even worse case.
That's even worse, yeah. I remember discovering about it first time.
Yeah, or just somebody. There was a Twitter trend of ruin a fairy tale in a few words or less, and I just said everyone dies in the German version. Especially stuff like the Wolf's Glen in. I'm just gonna use the English version because I'm gonna butcher German. The Free Shooter, where you have one of the characters involved getting torn apart by wolves after getting tossed in their cave. And there's also possibilities going further east. Have you ever seen the film Incantation that came out a few years ago?
I don't think I have. I heard the name, I think, but I haven't watched it.
It was actually pretty good. And in a similar vein, I'd also invoke some of the films that Robert Eggers has done. Yes, Nosferatu is one example, and Nosferatu was really good. But he has this thing of treating local mythology as if it's completely real by the people within it. And one of the things he had in the Northman, which didn't do well in theaters but got a second chance on streaming. It was still the tail end of the pandemic, but it had the idea of a sword called Draugr, undead, and the sword could only be drawn at night. Now, whether or not it could actually only be drawn at night, or whether or not that was part of some hallucination, it never outright says. But it provokes a powerful image of a sword literally named Undead that can only be drawn when the sun is not out. You know, that
Interesting.
that kind of mythology is something that can be explored. And is it possible you could explore this with other games? Yes, but I feel like the framework we're seeing with the Blasphemous RPG provides an easier framework than, say, Pathfinder might.
No, I agree.
Could you do it in Pathfinder? Yeah. Is it worth it with the amount of house ruling you'd have to do? I don't know about that. When your house ruling is to the point where your collection of house rules is a small book by itself, I think we've crossed a threshold.
Yeah.
But that will do it for this particular episode of The Valley. We will be back next week with the first part of our look at the Phantasy Star role-playing game.
Awesome.
I do have that. You should have that in the folder that is shared.
I got it.
Yeah, obviously we're not going through the whole damn book in one stream. That would be a little bit excessive.
Yes.
And I will note I'll be taking a particular approach because the idea of Phantasy Star in tabletop form isn't new to me. I've seen it in some games. What is going to be new is the fact that it's covering the early games as well as the later games. And I did take a look at the reference material that they used. They went in deep with some.
That's good.
With some of the reference material that they brought up, and I know who's involved with the project and their previous work. I think we are potentially in good hands, but we will have a chance to see in more detail as we go in. I do know for a fact that even though it's using the 5e framework, this isn't compatible with 5e. Not in the same sense.
Okay.
Especially since it's based more on the rule set of Esper Genesis, which is a self-contained hack. But it's 228 pages. There's no way we can get through that in one sitting.
Possible.
But with that said, as always, a sincere thanks to everyone who took the time out of their schedule to come onto the show and enjoy the madness. And there will be plenty more where that came from, as there always is here, on the open bar of the internet. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.
を持つ